Welcome everybody to Booze Hour Community Edition today. Very excited to have on Dan Killey. I'll bring him on in just a moment here, but we're going to have a great conversation about banking and digital transformation in that industry. So I'm really looking forward to that. Again, we're in season 2 now of Booze Hour Community Edition. So this is a confined season. So I'm just doing 6 of these with some hand-picked guests for some topics that I was interested in, that hopefully everybody else is interested in as well. All with the theme of digital transformation though. So I think that's, it's been a buzzword for a number of years at this point, but I think in the past year, as we've seen that physical interactions just can't happen anymore for all sorts of reasons, that the digital transformation journey for a lot of different industries has had to happen. And while you might work in a different industry from gaming or banking, hopefully there's some lessons learned from other industries that might translate into the stuff that you're doing. So those are the thought processes behind why I pick certain topics here, and today's topic I think will apply to everybody. At least on a personal level, because we all have to deal with banks and we're all dealing with personal finance. And so we should be able to cover lots of things around there. Before we get started, a couple things. If you're watching from LinkedIn right now, that's great. If you found this without actually following me, you'll want to hit follow on my profile so that you can see when I go live in future. Again, there's a couple more episodes of this, and there's more live streaming that I do for other types of broadcasts as well. We're live every Monday with my counterpart Daryl Montgomery as well, and you'll also find us on YouTube as well. So if you go to youtube.com/DarylandBoo, and if you're there already, that's great. If you have not subscribed, there should be a subscribe button that's just kind of down here or so, or maybe it's kind of over here depending on how the screen is laid out for you. But also you'll want to subscribe on there. On there, you'll see more streams than we would on LinkedIn, and the pre-recorded content is usually uploaded to at least YouTube, and then sometimes into LinkedIn as well, depending on the type of content that it is. So a couple things to check out there. Also, there's a mailing list. So if you go to darylandboo.com, a mailing list to sign up for, just weekly F5 centered content, but also things and just updates around the world of the live streams that we're doing outside of the specific F5 topics. And then stuff around the guests that we bring on every Monday as well for more of the casual weekly update live stream. So lots of ways to follow along with us. Now, a couple folks that I want to thank, my friends here at Okta, HashiCorp, WeHack Purple, and Equinix. Great supporters of the show, so I thank them for helping out with getting the show off the ground for this season. Otherwise, I'll bring on Dan in 1 second here. Dan is somebody that I met a few years ago working on some stuff with him at one of his previous roles. And I always found that Dan was really good at articulating what the business wanted out of a certain project. And in his new role now and the roles that he's held along the way into this role, he was somebody who was kind of marrying that business and technology side of things, which is exactly what digital transformation is going to be all about. So it'd be great to have him on, and I will bring him on right now. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. That's a very generous and kind introduction.
I think it's well deserving. As I mentioned, met you a few years ago, but you seem to have migrated your career into a great spot now. So why don't you give a little introduction for yourself, and where you came from and where you're at now today?
Sure, yeah. Started out as a computer programmer and spent the last 20 years helping financial institutions, credit unions, and banks here in Canada on their digital and payment needs. And then about the last couple years, really took that from being focused on the credit union space to also partnering and looking at a global provider that I'm have now joined. I like to say I joined the mothership after helping some of their customers on their actual implementations. I then really enjoyed the company and decided to join the mothership, and now I'm part of that more global company, so I can take that Canadian knowledge, that West Coast experience as well, and apply that globally and still keep the Canadian folks well taken care of.
Wow, that's really cool. So, you have experience with getting products like this off of the ground and kind of taking the business needs and turning them into what the technology solution was going to look like, and that kind of came from a programming background.
Yeah, and so started out as a computer programmer, but quickly moved into sort of release management and the support side of applications and business needs. And so, yeah, always played that cusp of was usually always on the tech side, and was always interfacing with the customer, with my internal customers, the lines of business and things like that, to say what they needed. And that really just allowed me to grow into that. What is the language they're using? What are their business objectives? I need to translate that back into what the teams are doing. And so, yeah, now I can kind of, jump a little bit on both sides of that sort of, unfortunately, it's still a little bit of a fence sometimes, but
Hmm.
be able to translate kind of both. And yeah, lots of people just, will come and be like, Dan, can you be that universal translator for me? This techie person is saying this, or this business person is saying this, and I don't speak that language. Can you help just kind of make it make sense? And I do my darndest.
Yeah, that's very cool. That is such a valuable skill to have. Like I remember working in an IT department, I guess 15 years ago at this point, and we had IT business analysts, and I just didn't really understand what they did. I was like, oh, somebody wants us to click the thing, so why don't they just tell us to click the thing? But now I start to realize, hey, that's actually a really important position. Somebody that can actually ask us to click the thing because the actual ask was something totally different. So that's pretty cool. So a couple of things that I thought we could talk about today, and I think they kind of revolve around the company that you work for now. So maybe you can kind of describe the current position that you're in, the company, and what they do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm with a company called ebankIT, and we're a global omni-channel digital banking platform provider. And so, yeah, we provide digital banking platforms for financial institutions around the world. And we've actually had a lot of success here in Canada as of late, a lot of success here on the West Coast. And so that's what really brought them onto my radar. And again, was able to be part of some of the customer implementations that were happening with financial institutions in Canada, got to know them. And I know I kind of already said this, but it really is true. And just the culture and the fit. Not only did they have, I guess a little bit self-serving, did they have an amazing platform? Yes. But just the people and the culture was a very strong fit to a lot of the Canadian values and what we see sort of on here on the West Coast. So it was a really great fit, and to be able to join them was absolutely um, a big win for myself. And so my current role is VP of Customer Engagement. And so with that, there's a couple things that I do. First is in the entire life cycle of a customer with us, whether that's You've signed up with us. You've gone through all that process. We're the right fit for you, and this is the platform you want. Making sure that that project gets well defined up front, that we know what we're going to do, and just make sure all of that sort of upfront work is going to be successful. Then we get into the project, make sure that all the project's running well. We're hitting all of our milestones. We're delivering to you what you want, and then once we get into live and post production, make sure that that ongoing relationship is working well for you. That all of the aspects of ebankIT as a company you're connected into, whether you need to be connected into the sales organization because you need some new modules, or you're connected into the support organization because you found some bugs, or you're connected into our product team and where we're going from an evolution perspective. Just make sure all the right folks are having those sort of right conversations. And then as well with Canada, I can bring a little bit of that Canadian translation that sometimes is needed. I like to say that my analogy is, so the company I work for is based out of Portugal, and they're in the port region. So most of us will know them as they make really great port.
Nice.
Canada, and not far from here, we have some really great ice wine. And there's some fundamentals there that make sense. And banking also makes sense and is universal. But there's a little bit of difference when you make port wine, which is amazing, and you make ice wine that is amazing. So there's a few subtle differences in Canada between banking, and just bringing that subtle difference to the organization makes it successful for everybody. So that when, here in Canada, we talk about e-transfers, and and for most people that work in banking in Europe, they're like, why do you guys have so many different ways of transferring money? You guys know it's easy. You just need one way of transferring money. And we're like, true, they actually have us there. It can be a lot simpler than how it's grown. But the fact is, here in Canada, it's a little bit more, you have a lot more options here right now. And so I can bring that translation and that knowledge to the wider team. And yeah, that's kind of what I do on a daily basis.
Well, that's really cool. Have you had an opportunity to go to port yet?
No, so that's one of the things. I only joined the mothership last year during COVID. So it's one of those years to join an international company when in such a year we're having. Is just, I'm not going to be visiting the port country, the Doravale Valley anytime soon, but one day.
Yeah, that'll be pretty exciting, I'm sure. Okay, cool. So a couple of things that I wanted to ask then is, when, you would think that, okay, we have very established credit unions at this point. Like, I don't see, outside of some of these online first banks that we've maybe seen pop up in the last decade or so, the credit unions and the banks that I interact with, they're all established ones. So they would have had some sort of banking platform before. So what kind of motivates a bank these days to move into something like this? Is there something inherent with the existing banking platforms that makes it harder to digitally transform that bank to go forward?
Yeah, it's kind of like most software or pieces of hardware or whatnot that a technology or an organization would have. A piece of technology they would have, which is, every once in a while you really need to kind of probably look at what you have and say, you know what, no longer can I keep sort of upgrading it. I really need to fundamentally bring in a whole new platform that one perhaps was designed 10, 20 years ago. And by actually getting rid of that platform completely and starting fresh, you can actually then improve your time to market and all the great things that come with that, more features and all the promises you would get from a new platform or a modern platform you would get. And it's usually become a lot easier and more cost effective for organizations to actually pivot to a new platform than to keep their old platforms running. Just all that old baggage starts to add up, and sometimes just starting fresh is actually far more lucrative. And with the pace of change that's happening in the world today, you need to be on a platform that can evolve quickly.
So the alternative is people are kind of bolting on custom code into older platforms just to make them work, and have to have their own team that supports all that stuff?
Exactly. Yeah, you're going to have some that are going to keep doing it themselves, or some that might look for providers that are kind of local and smaller in nature, versus saying, you know what, something like a digital banking platform. There's actually now platform companies out there. We happen to be one of them. There are many, but there are now global choices that you can align to. So rather than doing it all yourself, it's now a question of, why wouldn't I go and find a platform that does it rather than maintaining it myself?
Hmm. No, that makes sense. Um, so one of the terms that I've been hearing thrown around with the financial institutions that I've been working with has been open banking, and I know for ebankIT, and you refer to it as omnichannel. Is that the same thing, or maybe you can kind of take us through the definition around open banking? I think it's a word that a lot of people should understand in the tech industry now.
Sure, yeah. So let me, I'll even start with your omni-channel, because it'll give a little bit more context, and then I'll get into open
Mm,
banking. So omni-channel is really that promise and belief that I could do a task on many different channels. Doesn't matter where I started. I could start a mortgage application on my phone. I could then maybe say, wow, this is asking me for a lot of stuff, and I could then pick it
mm,
up on my desktop and add in all my PDFs or whatever I need to add onto there. And then maybe I still run into trouble and I call up my local institution, and I'm talking to someone on the phone, or I go into a branch, and all that data and all that things that are happening in my workflow go with me, and it's seamless to me. Um, Same thing that I could just go into a branch and do anything that I can do in that branch that I could do in my mobile phone, vice
mm,
versa, and the experiences are fairly similar. So that's that omni-channel uh, dream and goal, where that experience with the institution is universal and available to you, and however way you want to consume it. Open banking's a little bit build on top of that. That open banking is sort of saying, my data, my transaction, my balances, make them available. So have my
mm,
financial institution make them available to me to be able to use with partners of my choice. So if I go, a very frequent common one is Mint. They have
mm,
a financial product that I can put all my data in there, and they do some fun things with it. I can do some budgeting, and I can do some, they do some great things there. And so what it says is, allow me to get my data that's inside my financial institution, allow me to easily get that into other services that I may want to consume, and as well make it easy for me to potentially do transactions with my financial institution. Allow a partner to perhaps initiate a transaction on my behalf, and I go in and say, yes, I do want to do that transaction, and click approve.
mm.
And of course, then doing all of that workflow in an omni-channel, which no matter where I am, being able to do that sort of stuff is helpful. Um, Open banking, we'll also know from Europe is ahead of us on that. They've had it for a few years, so that's usually also known as PSD2, is sort of the feature. And here in Canada, we're kind of in the middle. We're a little bit, we're not the leader in open banking, because Europe did it first, but we're also not sort of the last behind. But it does offer some very alluring promise, and I'm personally excited to hopefully see that it comes to an institution to us sooner rather than later, and hopefully we'll start to see it in the market before the government sort of mandates it. But the government is also working on making it sort of a requirement that we as Canadians, or anyone, whatever country you happen to be in, that it's sort of a lawful requirement that your bank makes this data available in an easily consumable way.
That's interesting that the government would get involved and mandate something like that. You would think that the financial institutions would be maybe willing, or maybe they don't have that mindset of, hey, we want to do this because this is going to enable more business from us. Like maybe is like a use case, somebody goes to a car dealership and they want to transact that, and so they can do their loan and their car loan, and they can just apply for it kind of through the car dealership, and it just goes back to your bank. Is that a scenario?
Yeah, that's exactly a great scenario, actually. So one of the ones there would be that lender that perhaps it's not the auto dealership themselves, but they've partnered with sort of a lender, and that lender says, okay, maybe you have a mid-range credit score, so they're like, well, we don't know that you can afford that
Mm,
really that nice car, but you look like a good fellow, so maybe if we run a view of your spending habits, we'll be able to see that you're a good spender, and that everything you're telling us is on the up and up, and then you can walk away with the car. And sure enough, we go in and say, well, yeah, while you haven't maybe had the same job for the last year or 2 years, we can see that you had steady income, even though it's come from different spots. We can see that you're not spending above your what you're taking in. So actually, yeah, you're a good person to lend money to, and great. Here's the keys to your car, and you would decide to share that data with them to your benefit. Yeah.
Mm. That's interesting. I guess some of the concerns that folks might have then is going to be around security and the identity that they now have to, or I guess it's the responsibility of the financial institution to protect, because ultimately you sign in and you can get personal identifiable information potentially, or some clues towards identifying that person. That's all being addressed within these modern applications, I guess, or how is that looked at?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a double responsibility in my personal perspective, and I'm not sure where the government's landing on it. So this is going to be Dan's personal choice. Um, to me, it's a shared responsibility in that at the same time, you don't want the banks to be the gatekeepers of all the partners that they allow into the ecosystem, because you
Mm.
still end up with the closed model that you have today. So you want the criteria to be open and allow any sort of fintech or whatnot to be able to meet that criteria, and it to be universal, and not to be, well, this set of FIs have this requirement and this FI has this requirement, and I have to go and meet all of those, because basically then you're never going to get that universal partner that can connect into that universal data. And then at the
Mm.
same time, you want to also put it on to the customer to say, well, um, if you want to use that particular loan company, you should be prepared that we will release your personal information to them. So you should only release it to the organizations you feel comfortable with. And you may feel comfortable with lender A, but not feel comfortable with lender B. But someone else
Mm.
who has a different value system may love B and not like A. And so it's sort of a fine line there where we want to give people that empowerment of their own data, but also then say, so with it comes responsibility. You need to make sure that you're giving it to the right people that are going to protect it, and that we'll try to put some rules in place and make sure that there's some minimum guidelines and stuff like that. But I think you also still need to be wary on who you say yes, share your data with.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is there then like things like scope that is looked at, like, or once somebody signs in, maybe they have access to just exactly what they need. Maybe they don't need to see how much is being going out of the, or where things are going out to from accounts. They don't need to know you're spending X amount of money at some sort of place, but they want to see that you're getting deposits every week or whenever you say your paycheck is, and maybe that's something that can be controlled.
Exactly. There will be those kind of controls to say, well, look, for this particular use case over here, I only want to provide balances. And maybe I only want to provide balance on my checking account. I don't want them to see what
Mm.
my mutual funds are or anything like that. That's not related to what I'm asking them to do for me today. And then there could be a provider like a Mint, a PFM provider, who you're like, well, no, actually, I'm entrusting them to crunch all my data for me. In order to do that, they need to have intimate knowledge of all of that, and I trust them with all that other information. So I'm going to give them open access, but I'm still only going to give them read-only access. And then there could be even another one where it's like, I am going to allow my accountant perhaps to initiate transactions on my behalf. I still have to approve them, but they can maybe submit
Mm.
a transaction on my behalf to move some money around for some particular reason. And you just click, yeah, actually, I do want to do that.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. So then at that point, I kind of wonder about, we're able to do a lot of this stuff on, we have some scenarios here where we can do stuff online. I wonder what yeah, and I have this word of customer journey that I think about when it comes to digital transformation, and so maybe some of the journey previously was, hey, I go to a branch and I make the deposit of my paycheck and I withdraw some money and I go do whatever with it, and then I need to come into the branch again if I want to do a loan, if I want to take out a mortgage, if I want to get sort out financing for a car. all the things that I would do at a bank. What point are we at now where, to be honest, I don't know the last time I went into a bank, besides to use the ATM, but last time I actually had to interact with a teller. Like we're pretty far down that journey now, it seems, of that digital customer journey, would you say?
Yeah, and it's actually up to the person. So there's some of us that are probably more aligned actually to technology. So maybe more the audience that we have today who are much more into that. Yeah, I want self service. I want to do it on my own timeline. So I might want to do it at 11 o'clock at night, and I don't need to talk to anybody. Actually, I'm give me a mouse and a keyboard or a touch screen, and I will do it self service. And I would prefer that than talking to somebody. You still have a lot of people and it varies all on age, who would love to just talk to that person and walk them through and maybe get some reassurance that what they're doing is not going to be a mistake, and they want that personal touch. And so there's still demand for both sides. But I think where you're going at is, yes, there is a lot more processes, especially given the last year, that are now much more digital friendly than they ever were. Those few processes or select processes that were still quite didn't quite get there to be digital before 2020 are definitely now digital in 2020. And the things that can't be done fully digital are very few and far between nowadays.
Mm. Very cool. We just got 2 minutes left here, Dan. So I'm gonna pop this question on you. Let's say I'm just graduated high school and I'm 18, 19 years old, and I've done some banking. My banking was something that my parents set up for me before when I was a little bit younger, got my first job or whatever. But now I'm venturing out on my own, and I want to select a bank, and I want to I'm of a younger age and I want to have all the fancy features and stuff. What does that young person look for now when they want to deal with a bank? What are the things that are going to be important to them that they need to evaluate amongst banks now to pick out what's best for them?
Oh gosh. Um, I think definitely watch out for the creeping fees. There is a lot of now
Mm,
options and variety that you can do your banking without paying your near zero or very low in fees. And I don't think that is reflective at all of the service you're getting. I think that's more reflective of um, the financial institutions are able to make, based on your deposit, they're able to make money other ways. And so I think make sure you're not ending up in a package of high fees, and over time you're really going to feel that pain. Um, Look for someone you're comfortable asking for advice on. In that, one of the few things I might say that your parents might not be the best person to hand information down on is banking. You might have a parent that is very affluent in financial stuff, but you may also have one who has done very well, but in banking and understands the stuff, but maybe doesn't understand how things have changed and evolved. And I've seen that in a few different scenarios. So make sure you have someone where you can ask the questions, go in and make sure that those assumptions you're making that perhaps were passed on from you are true. Make sure you ask someone to validate those things, and that probably sets you off on a good foot there.
yeah. So some of those interactions now, I guess, with these digital banking platforms, are we talking like chat bots and stuff that I'm actually talking to online, or virtual phone call, or virtual conferences and stuff? Or how's that interaction look like for that 19-year-old now?
Yeah, I think for the day-to-day stuff, you're going to see those chat bots, or you're just going to do it yourself. But what I'd still encourage people not to skip out on is set up a little bit of that one-to-one. Get a video chat
Mm,
going, appointment going, where you can talk one-to-one for 15 minutes or a half an hour, and really make sure that they understand where you're at and what you're trying to do, and just get that validation of you're on the right investment track, or you're putting the right stuff in the right savings vehicle or something like that. And yeah, don't avoid setting up a video chat with somebody. It's worth its time sometimes.
Cool. Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks for that answer. I was seeing if I could trap you into naming your favorite credit union, but you did not. So you passed the test for today, and you'd make a great politician. Thank you for jumping on. We did make it to 30 minutes, and I haven't gone over, and I'm proud of myself for today. So that was great. I have, tons of stuff, like folks who watched my Monday live stream. I love talking about personal finance and investing and stuff like that. So I'm sure I could have asked you a ton more questions here, but we'll leave her there. Thank you very much for coming on, Dan. And for folks wondering, I should have another live stream going next week. I have two more guests left, so be sure to follow on LinkedIn or subscribe on YouTube and the mailing list as well at darylandboo.com. And yeah, otherwise, we'll see you all at the very earliest will be Monday. All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.